Well, hello, free people of the Rocky Mountain region. This is Brandon from freestatecolorado.com with your weekly news roundup for September 10th, 2023. Every week, I take a look at some headlines, news stories, and articles from across our great state to provide a glimpse of the goings on and maybe some news stories you didn't see during the course of your normal week. So pour yourself a cup of coffee and let's see some headlines. I'd like to mention, of course, here at the beginning that freestatecolorado.com is where you're going to find links to all of these news stories discussed. So if you want some more information, you want to dig deeper into the stories, check out freestatecolorado.com and you can just find the post on this weekly roundup for this week. Additionally, got some great interviews done recently with Jacob Luria, who's running for Golden City Council here in 2023, a liberty-minded individual taking the fight to City Hall, as well as Jessica Fenske running for Arvada City Council, libertarian, very interesting candidate. Additionally, I've been doing these video series with the great Liberty rock star out of Lakewood, Natalie Menton, discussing property taxes, how you can actually lower property taxes in your local community without relying on the state legislature, how bad Proposition HH is, a really bad ballot initiative that needs to be voted no on in this coming election, as well as the Taxpayer Bill of Rights and what we can do to defend it. So check that out, everything at freestatecolorado.com. Got more articles, interviews, and videos coming out there pretty continuously. But let's get back to the headlines. Let's see what's been going on this week. This is from Colorado Peak Politics, coloradopeakpolitics.com, September 5th, 2023. Congresswoman thinks drug cartels don't use the border to smuggle fentanyl. Interesting. It was a toss-up as to who was more confused about fentanyl smuggling at the border, freshman Democrat U.S. Representative Brittany Pettersen or the host of Colorado Point of View. Pettersen told KDVR host Ashley Michaels, "We absolutely need security at the border. We do have significant security at the border. That's why cartels don't actually use the border for trafficking." The freshman congresswoman said instead, "Almost 90% of the fentanyl that is coming into the U.S. is coming through our ports." Wow. What in the heck is she talking about, says the author of this article. Great Twitter account, Mr. T2, says Colorado Congresswoman Pettersen says since we have security measures at the border, the cartels aren't using the border for trafficking. Is Brittany Pettersen the dumbest member of Congress from Colorado or just most dishonest? Of course, you can find lots of articles online, a quick internet search to find how much fentanyl is coming across our southern border. Pretty easy to see. This article continues to go on through some of the details here on that. But wait, there's more. Pettersen also blamed Republicans for the fentanyl seized at ports because she says they voted against Biden's infrastructure boondoggle, which included hundreds of millions for port authorities and shipping terminals, most of which are operated by foreign companies. So it's very unfortunate that Brittany Pettersen is so poorly informed or maybe just making a fool of herself on TV, but not too surprising if you know anything about her record here in the state legislature when she was at the Capitol. Unfortunately, Pettersen has been on the wrong side of almost every issue out there, and unfortunate that she's kind of just, being a little silly here. But anyways, let's move on, see the next story of the week. The sum and the substance. What matters to Colorado businesses? TSScolorado.com. Chamber survey, regulations have put economy on wrong track. No surprise there. This is from Ed Sealover, September 6th, 2023. Colorado's economy has turned definitely onto the wrong track and is forcing businesses to consider expanding elsewhere, with growing state regulations cited as the largest impediment, according to a survey of business owners done for the Colorado Chamber of Commerce. The survey of 156 business owners, conducted in June and July by national research firm Cole, Hargrave, Snodgrass and Associates, found that business leaders are, quote, more dour today than last year about the direction of the state, end quote. CHS President Pat McFerrin said. 60% of all respondents said that the economy is on the wrong track, and that percentage grows to 67% or greater for companies that operate in multiple states and firms doing business primarily along the Front Range. The primary reason for that negativity, the effect of regulations on businesses' ability to operate, is a subject over which business owners have expressed concern for the past several years. But this year, it was so much more prevalent as the biggest struggle for firms in Colorado than for those in other states, where CHS has polled that it is shocking, McFerrin said. Wow. So not too surprising, Colorado has been, the Colorado legislature, the Colorado government has been very anti-business, especially this last year. If you've been watching these weekly roundups during the legislative session earlier this year, you'll know that these out of touch legislators have done everything they can to force work week standards, extra pay, and commuting restrictions on some of these local businesses. It's no surprise that businesses are looking to leave Colorado. This article does go through a lot of the list specific regulations, data, customer privacy laws, family and medical leave insurance, paid sick leave mandates, wage transparency rules. So, a new definition of harassment, crackdown on age discrimination. I mean, these things might seem like small issues. First emission reduction requirements for buildings. You might think these are small issues, but if you're running a business operating on thin margins, any one of these issues could mean the difference between you making a profit and failing. And unfortunately, our state legislature either doesn't understand how businesses operate or they want to push them out, which, I would not be surprised, unfortunately. So take a look at this article, really interesting to see. And, I think for future candidates, if you're running for office or planning on it or want to be politically active from more of an activist standpoint, focusing on standing up for the business community and really trying to make it clear that these politicians are making life harder for business owners, for entrepreneurs, for people who are employing people in our community. I mean, you make you make life harder for the employers. What do you think it's going to do to employees? It's going to be either less jobs or less opportunity, really. So check that out, but let's go ahead and move on. Just a follow up article here from the Denver Post. I thought it was a little interesting to kind of continue on this trend for a minute. Heavier regulatory burden as Colorado business leaders looking elsewhere, poll says. So, of course, you see some of the worst offenders here in our state legislature, these people who don't know much about business. This is from Aldo Savaldi from September 8th, 2023. Colorado business leaders are much less worried about finding new workers than they were a year ago, but have increasingly soured on the state's regulatory climate, and a host of new labor laws passed in recent years are cited as the chief reason why. Having conducted more than 50 studies of business in other states, this is the greatest concern about the regulatory climate I've ever recorded, said Pat McFerrin, president at Cole Hargrave Snodgrass and Associates. McFerrin, speaking on a Zoom call to discuss the results, said the high cost of doing business is causing a striking number of businesses based in the state to consider expanding and making investments elsewhere. Lawmakers need to understand that every new regulatory burden coming from the Capitol has a real impact on jobs and economic growth. The data is clear. We're losing out to other states because of our business climate, which is chipping away at our competitiveness and driving businesses to invest in other states, said Lauren Ferment, president and CEO of the Colorado Chamber, which sponsored the survey. 4 in 10 of those surveyed said they believe the state's economy is headed in the right direction, while the remainder said it is on the wrong track. Last year's inaugural survey had a closer split, with 46% saying Colorado was on the right track and 53% saying it was on the wrong track. When asked about the most important issue facing Colorado businesses, nearly half of the respondents mentioned regulations, while only 11% cited workforce needs. That is a big shift from the 2022 survey when the two items were roughly tied at 26% and 27%, respectively. So, as you can see, things seem to be getting worse. I think this year's legislature is a big reason why. Unfortunately, we have elected Democratic socialists serving in our state legislature. We have people who hate capitalism, who hate free markets serving in our government. So it's no surprise that these businesses are feeling like they're being pushed out of Colorado. This needs to change. Of course, if you care about Colorado, you want a good business climate, you want good employers, you want high paying jobs where people have an opportunity to improve their lives. So, unfortunately, our state legislatures are either economically ignorant or economically malicious. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. Let's go ahead and move on to the next article here. Of course, you may have seen this in the headlines. A big news story, of course, talked about it previously. Colorado Secretary of State calls Trump a liar, vows to see Ballot lawsuit through. This is from September 9th, 2023. So, of course, what they're talking about in this article from thehill.com is the fact that somebody is suing Colorado government to try and make sure that former President Donald Trump is not on the ballot coming up here in 2024. And of course, our nonpartisan, fair and balanced Secretary of State has decided that she's going to completely take sides. No surprise there. A total anti-Trump, anti-Republican person who doesn't really care about the constituency that makes up nearly half of the state. Let's look at the article. Colorado Secretary of State Jena Griswold called former President Trump a liar after he suggested a recent push to use the 14th Amendment to keep him off the ballot in the state was election interference. Trump is a liar with no respect for the Constitution, Griswold said in an interview on MSNBC on Saturday. To say that a section of the 14th Amendment is election interference and considering how to uphold the Constitution as election interference is un-American. Wow. We know that the former president is a liar who will do everything he can to hold on to power. So he's going to hold on to power. He doesn't have it right now, but all right. Griswold and Trump were both named in a recent lawsuit filed by Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, CREW, which argues that the former president is disqualified from the 2024 ballot under the 14th Amendment's Section 3, also dubbed the Insurrection Clause. It was the reason, of course, that the word insurrection was used so much over the past few years was for this very purpose. The Washington, D.C. based watchdog group asked the court to find Trump's alleged actions related to the January 6, 2021, to bar Griswold from allowing him on the 2024 Republican primary ballot or any future ballots in the state. Griswold added on Saturday that she plans to see this litigation through, noting that she thinks it's good for the court to weigh in on the issue. Wow. So here's what Griswold says. Donald Trump incited an insurrection. And there are big constitutional questions around that provision as to whether he is disqualified from the Colorado ballot, Griswold continued. So we'll see this litigation through, and ultimately I think it's important for a court to weigh in and provide guidance. So, of course, a little bit of bias there from Griswold. She, of course, would love to see Trump get off the ballot. Unfortunately, our Colorado Secretary of State has used her position, her elected position, to be an advocate for extreme left wing policies and using it to really push a partisan agenda. It's very unfortunate. And I think it's one of those reasons, just another example of why Colorado voters, of why people in Colorado are really losing faith in our local government here at the state level. When we see a Secretary of State, somebody in this level, completely have some bias in terms of some lawsuits, some court issue, then it's pretty obvious what their agenda is. Not too surprising, but nonetheless, always interesting to see. Let's go ahead and move on. The Great Complete Colorado, page 2.completecolorado.com. From September 6, 2023, Sherry Pife. Complete Colorado open records case moves forward. Judge orders documents turned over for review. So this is some great news here. Complete Colorado does some great investigative reporting, and it's good to see that they're actually pushing forward to get some documents that the government doesn't want released. A Denver District Court judge has ordered the Colorado Department of Healthcare Policy and Financing, HCPF, to supply Complete Colorado with more information as to why it withheld nearly 300 emails and other documents as part of an open records request. Judge Jill Dorency on Tuesday also ordered that HCPF turn over all of the documents in question to her so that she can compare the records to the newly ordered Vaughn Index and determine if any such documents were withheld properly. A Vaughn Index is a log that outlines such things as the type of document, the reason for it being withheld, and most importantly, an explanation as to why HCPF thinks it meets the definition of deliberative process, which is what the department claimed in withholding the requested documents. So, of course, this goes back to a bigger issue of this investigation that Complete Colorado has been doing to try and get some information about how the HCPF is working with progressive activists to push legislation in 2023. So let's see what this lawsuit's ultimately about. What is HCPF wanting to hold back? Among the records HCPF did release were emails that showed coordination between the department and progressive activists, who in turn had connections to legislators who carried bills in the 2023 legislative session that changed the way healthcare works in Colorado. The record's request is part of an ongoing Complete Colorado investigation concerning 3 legislative bills that appeared to flow out of previous claims by both Governor Polis and HCPF that hospitals are making record profits, retaining record reserves, and spending less money to benefit the communities in which they operate. So very interesting. Good to see a Complete Colorado being an advocate for transparency, trying to actually get some information about what's going on with the healthcare industry and this relationship between progressive activists and our state government and how they're influencing healthcare. And apparently not in a good direction, or else they would probably be releasing some of these documents. Let's go ahead and move on. But an interesting story I'll continue to keep an eye on. Gosh, another week, another bad look for Colorado schools. Jefferson County is taking flack left and right here. Unfortunately, they're really not doing their job, and parents are getting really upset about what's happening in Jeffco. Very sad, very unfortunate. This is from CBSNews.com, CBS Colorado. Controversy erupts in Jefferson County after the teachers union tells educators to destroy evidence of student surveys regarding gender identity. This is from Sean Boyd, investigative reporter, September 1st, 2023. Some parents in Jefferson County say teachers are breaking state and federal laws, and their union is helping them get away with it. At issue are student surveys about gender identity. While the school district says it's unclear whether surveys about students' preferred pronouns are illegal, there are several lawsuits regarding the issue. So administrators told teachers, just don't go there. The teachers union told them something else. An email from Jefferson County Education Association to teachers says, if you do a questionnaire, please make it a paper and pencil activity. Any digital records are more permanent and may be requested under federal law. So clearly, the teachers union is worried that some of these documents may be requested. So what is this questionnaire? What is this questionnaire they're doing about gender identity that they don't want to get out? Very odd. The union also encouraged teachers to make your notations about students that are not hold on to the documents. Denise Crawford, who has 3 kids in the school district, says she was encouraged when the district sent an email to all employees before the school year started, reminding them state and federal law prohibits mandatory surveys that ask kids about protected information, and even voluntary surveys, it said, are illegal unless parents can opt out. When her son came home with the survey asking about his gender identity, she was more than surprised. Gosh, I wonder how old that kid is. Deceived, lied to, taken advantage of, she said. She's not alone. Parents with Jeffco Kids First say dozens of teachers have conducted the surveys after their union advised them how to hide evidence of them. The leadership actually provided an avenue to get around the law and basically saying it was okay, says school board member Susan Miller. She says the union put teachers' jobs at risk. Those that violate the law can lose their license. Crawford says it also put teachers' relationship with parents at risk. I don't feel I can trust the teachers, she said. Well, yes, that is absolutely true. She says she reported her son's survey to his principal, but hasn't heard back. She says she's not anti-LGBTQ. Her nephew, she says, is transgender and her daughter's gay. This is not political. It's just they're breaking the law. So very, very sad to see that the teachers' unions are really not the best advocates for children. They're not the best advocates for teachers. And unfortunately, we're seeing kids caught in the crosshairs of it all. So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, there's some changes with school board races coming up here in this fall. Hopefully, some parents stand up, speak out, and if the opportunity is there, get your kids out of government schools. 100%. It's never been more clear how destructive and how anti-liberty, anti-family these public schools are. All right, let's move on. ColoradoPolitics.com, a very controversial subject here, of course, especially in Colorado's Republican Party right now. This is from Ernest Lunning, September 8th, 2023. Colorado's Ken Buck fires back at fellow Republicans' claims about January 6th defendants. There's Ken Buck there, a longtime serving congressman. Let's go to the article here. U.S. Representative Ken Buck is having none of it. The five-term Republican congressman from Windsor, a former chairman of the Colorado GOP, has spent the last week pushing back against a stew of false claims ladled out by fellow Republicans who maintain the federal government has mistreated defendants facing charges stemming from January 6, 2021. From a point-by-point response to a letter circulated last month by state Republicans to a stinging rebuke of a nationally prominent GOP lawmaker, Buck doesn't appear to have pulled any punches in his attempt to set the record straight. I don't want folks to get distracted from the issues that matter to most voters, Buck told Colorado Politics. We have a great opportunity in this election cycle to talk about inflation and the border and crime. And those are the things that we should be focused on. And so when I saw this letter, I just wanted to respond factually to it and make sure that the Republican Party is trying to win elections and not just argue about the issues. Written by El Paso County GOP Vice Chairman Todd Watkins, the August 21st letter declares that regardless how anyone feels about Donald Trump or the events of January 6th, quote, it is impossible to deny the facts that many Americans have been grossly mistreated and abused by our legal system, end quote. I don't know, it doesn't seem too controversial, at least that line. Let's continue. Watkins' letter makes numerous unfounded claims, including that, quote, hundreds, end quote, of January 6 defendants, quote, have been and are still detained without bond, most for misdemeanor offenses, end quote. Watkins alleged that many have been abused by their captors and denied medical treatment, and that almost all have been denied access to counsel, end quote, and any semblance of due process, end quote. The government, Watkins alleged, has violated constitutional rights guaranteed by the 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, and 14th Amendments. Quote, our justice system has become a vehicle for vengeance and a tool for silencing political dissent. It has become a weapon to inflict fear on the American people writ large, end quote, Watkins wrote. Hard to argue with that, in my opinion. Anna Ferguson, the Colorado GOP secretary, shared the letter in a call to action with the state party's email list and asked those who agreed to sign their names, adding that she would forward it to the state's D.C. delegation, quote, so they can act on it at the federal level. In addition to Ferguson, initial signers included El Paso GOP chairwoman Vicki Tompkins and state reps Scott Bottoms and Ken DeGraff, both Colorado Springs Republicans. In a September 4th Facebook post, Marie Watkins, Todd Watkins' wife, said more than 250 Republicans had already signed the letter. Buck was the only federal lawmaker who responded, she noted. In a heavily footnoted 4-page letter, Buck rebutted each of the charges made by Watkins, conceding there was a germ of truth in a couple of his points, but mostly dismantling the allegations. Quote, the letter makes a number of factually incorrect claims and then proceeds to overstate the threat to our republic based on these false claims, end quote, Buck wrote. Quote, there has been significant misinformation proliferated on the internet about the status of the January 6 defendants. And I assume these internet rumors are the source for much of the incorrect information contained in the letter. I hope this response will help clarify the situation and you will cease disseminating false information. So very interesting. Read that if you'd like. You can also find a link to the letters on there. Very interesting, though, to see the split. Ken Buck has been kind of a champion for the more of the liberty side of Congress. So very interesting to see him come to odds with the Republican Party of Colorado in terms of where they're at on wanting to stand up for the people who are imprisoned due to the events of January 6th. And I don't know, it's interesting. It's very interesting to see this fracturing of the Colorado Republican Party. What does it mean for the future? I mean, the one thing I guess I would say is that the Democrats are not this divided. They're divided on a lot of issues, don't get me wrong, especially at the state and local level. But on a federal level, they're pretty united. And of course, that's a difference between Democrats and Republicans in general. But it is interesting to see that this lack of cohesion among the Republicans in Colorado is there. And what is it going to mean for the future? We'll see. Let's go ahead and move on. Denverite.com. Denver looks to delay new sidewalk fees by 6 months. The city council member behind the proposed delay says it would give the city's task force time to figure out some details. Yesterday, it says, yesterday at 12:36 p.m. Denver City Council committee is set to vote next week on an ordinance that would delay the city's ambitious new sidewalk program and the property fees that come with it. by 6 months to July 2024. Voters approved the citizen-initiated program last November. It shifts responsibility for sidewalk maintenance from property owners to the city and levies a new annual fee on property owners to fund the program. The proponents behind the program designated the fee to scale with the size of a given parcel. The more street frontage, the more an owner would pay. Property owners in denser central neighborhoods will see relatively low annual fees. About half of all single-family homeowners in the city will pay between $100 and $200 every year, according to city data from mid-August. But property owners on corner lots, especially in suburban-style neighborhoods, will face higher bills. Properties on busier streets will be charged higher fees too. About 20,000 homeowners will pay between $200 and $400. Nearly 8,000 will pay between $400 and $800. A few hundred would pay even more, the data shows. Wow. So it's very unfortunate to see that life is getting more expensive for homeowners in Denver. You know, where is this going? Where the city is just nickel and diming property owners throughout the city. And what is that going to do to the cost of living? It's going to make things a lot more difficult. So very interesting to see this play out. Next article I want to talk about here is of the similar vein. From westward.com, August 31st, 2023. First Denver property earns $999 fine for not getting rental license. So, of course, as you may know, Denver has now have a license program for people who want to rent their property out. Of course, making it more expensive and more difficult for property owners to rent their property. Of course, this is the same time when housing's at an all-time high, when rental rates are at an all-time high, and Denver's making it more difficult and more expensive to rent property out. Anybody who has a cursory understanding of economics will understand that this will lead to shortages and higher costs for rentals in Denver. The multi-unit apartment building at 3401 William Street in Denver's Cole neighborhood got hit with the city's first $999 fine in residential rental licensing history this week for refusing to comply with licensing orders, according to the Denver Department of Excess and Licenses. The building, owned by Jonathan Schwartz, received a violation on May 9th in the first wave of fines for the residential license. Enforcement begins with $150 administrative penalties for property owners and operators before nailing them with $500 and $999 tickets if they remain out of compliance. The building incurred a $500 fine in June after failing to comply and has now reached the maximum penalty threshold with a $999 fee that was issued on August 29th, the city announced Thursday. Excess and Licenses is technically allowed to fine an unlicensed operator $999 per day after it receives its first $999 penalty should they continue to ignore department orders. But city officials have previously said they hoped no property owner would actually reach that point. They typically try to use fines and citations as a last resort. Wow. So as you can see, it's becoming a lot more difficult to rent property in Denver. Of course, what is this going to do? I mean, it's ridiculous. Currently, 80,831 properties are in compliance, representing 135,000 rental units total. Of those, 4,857 are multi-unit residents like the William Street building, which were all supposed to be licensed by January 1st. The city predicts will be 25,000 licenses for multi-unit residences once they are accounted for. Wow. So you have thousands and thousands of licenses going out, notices of violation, 1,500 of them so far. I mean, what you're going to see is the property owners are going to have to pass these fees along to the people renting the property. I mean, how else can they do it? You know, some of these places don't really actually make that much money, unfortunately. So check that out if you're interested. But just another anti-property development in the Mile High city of Denver. Okay, moving on. Last article of the week here. From Complete Colorado, page 2 again, John Caldara. Lessons learned from school's Gadsden flag debacle, September 6th, 2023. So, of course, talked about this last week. It was all over social media. This poor young kid who got kicked out of school because he had a Gadsden flag patch on his backpack. And it was a Hillsdale charter school, kind of a classical liberty school. So, very unfortunate to see that happen in Colorado. Let's see what Caldera has to say. There's a lot to unfold with one Gadsden flag. The most surprising and disappointing point about this kerfuffle is that even at a reputable charter school with a classical curriculum, with an emphasis on teaching historic accuracy, staff needs to be schooled by parents that one of America's founding flags has nothing to do with slavery. The considerably greater takeaway is parents should record their encounters with school officials. That is huge. If you have any type of encounter with school officials, get your phone out. It might be a thing that guarantees an education for your child. If you missed the story, 12-year-old Jaden Rodriguez is a student at the Vanguard School in Colorado Springs, a public charter school. His backpack is adorned by many patches, including one of the Gadsden flag. I loved this flag long before it was made popular by the Tea Party movement. Its truly American slogan of "Don't tread on me" sings to my soul. Created in 1775, the rattlesnake was a common symbol of unity among the 13 colonies. That's both slave and free men colonies. Jaden's mother, or maybe it was Jaden, was clever enough to keep a phone video recording while she and the boy were hauled into the school to be lectured that the offending flag patch needed to be ripped from his backpack. It was offensive, the school official said, because of its obvious ties to slavery. We do not want the flag due to its origins with slavery and slave trade, they were told. When Miss Rodriguez calmly explained the flag had nothing to do with slavery, that it was an American flag from the Revolutionary period, the administrator, seeming not to believe or even care, fell back on what every bureaucrat always falls back upon. This is the school's policy. Ms. Rodriguez sent the video of this bizarre encounter to a buddy of mine, Connor Boyack, with the Libertas Institute, who put it out on X, formerly Twitter, and as the kids say, it blew up the internet. Even Governor Jared Polis weighed in, saying the Gadsden flag's great and kids should be able to express themselves with a patch of that or the rainbow flag or anything they like, so long as they're not disturbing the classroom. And you know how I hate to agree with Jared. The charter school had to do an embarrassing about face. After a few days from the school, Jaden's back in the classroom, flag patch and all, and hopefully his teachers know a little more about American history. So, key takeaway here from Caldara, if this incident were not recorded, we really wouldn't have known what exactly happened. So, one of the biggest lessons out there, if you interact with anybody in the government, whether it's a teacher, a bureaucrat, a police officer, try and get on video because you can easily be misrepresented. And it's very unfortunate that most of these political actors do not have the best interests of you, liberty, your family, or the community at heart. So check that out. Good article from John Caldara there. And I want to thank you for joining me this week on my weekly roundup from freestatecolorado.com. Doing this every week, and coming soon, some new videos with Natalie Menton about property taxes, about Liberty platforms for candidates for local office, and an article on tax money going to anti-gun groups. So look forward to that this week on freestatecolorado.com. We'll talk to you soon, and best wishes. Have a great week out there.